kind of in alignment with what we're talking about here. Can you give us some real world examples of how we can do less in our businesses and our life?
Yes. So number one, look at your revenue sources and eliminate any that are a pain in the ass to deliver, or, because
That's
that'll
a
free
good
up a lot of
gauge.
energy, which frees up.
Yeah.
Um, and look at your types of customers and, double down on the 80/20 rule. So that's one. And then another thing I really recommend, and this was passed along to me by some other women who were colleagues and mentors. They said, you gotta get the support that you have at home matters more, or at least get that first before
Yeah.
you get the support in your business. And I absolutely agree. We have the most world-class support in our home. And I was just talking to my girlfriend last night. So I have two little girls that they're almost 6 and 8.5.
Okay.
And when I get home at the end of the day and they're home, I am with them.
Hello, my extraordinary women friends. Just coming back from an incredible 5 days spent in person with my clients, 2 days with my platinum masterminders at a business retreat, followed by 3 days of speaker training. Our soul speaks from the stage for my soul plus strategy mastermind. I am reminded of the unparalleled energy that face-to-face interactions bring. There's an undeniable strength when women come together, sharing their stories and wisdom, creating a ripple effect of impact for their communities and for each other. I consider one of my superpowers to be gathering powerful women, watching them fuel each other and the world with their incredible stories and insights. The vibe from these gatherings is still resonating with me. It's a testament to the magic that unfolds when we connect and we share and we support one another in our journeys. I hope you too have found a circle of community that lifts your voice and business higher, a space where you can truly thrive. And speaking of thriving, today's conversation with Kate Northrup couldn't come at a more perfect time. Kate's philosophy of doing less aligns beautifully with the essence of our gatherings, creating significant impact without the burnout, leveraging our innate cycles for greater productivity and well-being, and fostering a supportive community that encourages growth and prosperity. I know you've heard me say it. It's all about the time prosperity and wealth prosperity in our businesses. As we dive into today's episode, let's carry with us the energy of connection, the power of community, and the wisdom that comes from collective experiences. Kate's insights into creating a life and business that flourishes on the principles of less effort and more essence promise to be more enlightening and transformative. So whether you're looking to deepen your relationship with time, money, or work, or simply seeking ways to infuse more peace and prosperity into your daily life, this conversation is sure to inspire and empower. Kate Northrup is not just an entrepreneur. She's a beacon for those seeking to redefine their relationship with work, money, and time. As a best-selling author, mother, and visionary behind the groundbreaking books, Money, A Love Story, and my favorite, Do Less, Kate has carved a unique path that encourages women to achieve their dreams while maintaining balance and joy in their lives. Her insights have captured the attention of major platforms like the New York Times, Oprah Daily, The Today Show, Glamour, and the Harvard Business Review, bringing light to the ways we can all work smarter, not harder. So if you're on a quest to reclaim your time, redefine success on your own terms, and cultivate a business and life that thrives without the constant state of busyness, this conversation is for you. Let's meet Kate Northrup. Well, welcome to Extraordinary Women Radio, Kate. It is great to have you here.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm thrilled to be here.
Yeah. Your book, Do Less, was one of my favorites in 2022. In fact, it's really dog-eared. It's I've traveled with it on planes. It's been well loved, and it's such a good book. I have a funny story. I was going through customs in Toronto, and the guy was going through my bag, and he finished going through my bag, and he hands it back to me, and he says, "Oh, one more thing." And I'm like, "Yeah." And he says, "Do less." because the book was in
So
my bag that
true.
day.
I love that. That's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah. Yeah. So I definitely devoured the book in a few short days and then have, gone back through it many times. So I think it's just really, really good. So
Thank
well
you.
done. Well
I'm
done.
really glad that it served you.
Yeah. 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 So when you wrote it, you talked about the way we work in our culture is as though we're in perpetual harvest. And really get that energy of, I see that. I work with women entrepreneurs and I see them in that perpetual harvest, always going, going, going. And this concept of slowing down and doing things different is something that I'm on a mission to change with my clients, is really to shift that up and to change that momentum. What was your story that really took you into the world of feeling that perpetual motion that you were
Mhm.
always in, and how you got called to shift that?
Yeah. So, part of that idea that we work as though we are or should be in perpetual harvest is also that we work as though we don't have bodies and we work
Mm,
as though we are not nature. So we have this idea that there's humans and then there's nature.
yeah.
And that's not true. We are animals. We are nature. There is no separation, but we live in this separate way and we see this divide. And so we wouldn't expect a flower to bloom 24/7. We know that a flower has seasons and cycles. We know, I'm from the Northeast. We know that the deciduous trees, the oaks, the maples, the birch trees, they have seasons. And we know that they're going to be bare in the winter. It's just part of the deal. We're not thinking like, what's wrong with those trees? They need to get it together and be more productive. That's just not how they're designed. And
Yeah.
just in the same way, we are not designed that way as human beings because we too are nature. And this came home in my own life when I was pregnant with my first daughter, which is really the most being pregnant and giving birth is by far the most primal, connected to my true nature that I have ever been. And so it's perfect that I was taught this lesson during my first pregnancy. And it was the first time that, I was just so tired during that pregnancy. And so many women talk about how, oh, you'll be tired in the first trimester. And then during the second trimester, you're going to get this huge burst of energy. And
Yeah.
I was just waiting for that. And it never happened. And I was
That's
just
funny. It didn't happen for me
wrecked.
either.
I was tired. I needed to sleep, 10 to 14 hours a day. Sometimes it was just wild. But my camera's doing, there we go. And so I had never had an experience before where I couldn't overcome a challenge. Uh, like I had always been able to overcome any challenge I had before by just kind of being smarter or trying harder or putting in more effort.
Uh-huh.
And this massive adjustment I needed to have in terms of the amount I could get done, I couldn't just try harder to overcome it. There was this pregnancy thing. This wasn't like I couldn't hack my way out of it. I just had
Right.
to surrender to this just is. And I had a thought, which was, okay, well, because it was a real identity shift. Um, And I didn't care as much about my business, which was also really weird because I'd been running my own business since I was 18 years old.
Hmm.
And that was really a huge part of my identity. And then I was just kind of like, does that really matter? And so I needed to really renegotiate my identity and ask the question, who am I if I'm not productive? Who am I if
Mm,
I'm not capable? What is
yeah.
my value?
Yeah.
And really rooting into that part in all of us, that place in all of us where our value is inherent. It's not earned. It's not earned through any kind of creativity or productivity or what we have to show for our lives or what we have to show for our days. We just are inherently worthy. We just deserve to be
Hmm.
here. And
Hmm.
so that's was the experience for me. I mean, that was the first half of it that
Right.
started to get me thinking about productivity and doing in a completely new way.
Right. To say that it's not about the doing. It's actually about being.
Mhm.
And what was the second half of that thing? Because now you've got me intrigued.
The second half is that, so after I gave birth to my first daughter, I had a real bumpy birth experience, and
Hmm.
she was sick when she was born and just had a lot of health challenges. And that first year was a real struggle for all of us. So my baby was sick. She had severe eczema and some real immune system issues. So sometimes she would wake up every 10 minutes at night screaming and scratching. And, there was blood all over her sheets and her crib. And the other day she said, Mama, do you have any videos of me laughing as a baby? And I was going through my phone and trying to find them. And it was really sad because I really couldn't find any videos of her laughing as a baby.
Wow. Oh.
That was just a couple of weeks ago. And I was like, and I was struggling with postpartum insomnia. I
Hmm.
couldn't sleep. I was so anxious. I had postpartum anxiety. And it was the hardest year I've ever gone through. And yet, and I thought that I didn't really need more than 10 hours of childcare a week. I thought somehow I could go from working, whenever I wanted to all the time. I thought 10 hours would be plenty of
Right.
support. I don't know what I was thinking. So with that 10 hours of childcare, we ran our business with this sick baby and just, barely making it through the day. And at the end of the year, we sat with our accountant and we realized we had made more money that year than in any previous year in our business, even though we had worked less than half the amount of time. And so
Mm.
while that year was excruciating in many ways, I
Right.
thought, well, this is very interesting because I was programmed to believe that in order to get a good result, you need to put in more and more effort. And then I saw on the P&L, on our balance sheet, that was not the case. We had put in less effort and had a better result, at least in terms of revenue
Right.
and our profits as well. And I thought, okay,
Right.
well, if I could do that by accident,
Yeah.
under duress, what could I do on purpose?
Right.
Surely
With
there's
intention. Right.
that I could do intentionally to
Yeah.
continue this same kind of do less, have more
Yeah.
reality
Yeah.
without a sick baby, without
Yeah.
struggling with postpartum insomnia, all of
Yeah.
that. And so
Yeah.
that's where the book Do Less came
Yeah. Well, that's what those were the seeds for the book then.
from.
That year. Wow. 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 And so as you stepped into that next year, then, as things started to settle down at home with your daughter, and you started doing less in your business as far as like pulling back, what were some of the key things you did in your business that helped that shift?
Yes. So one that I love talking about is I had learned about Pareto's principle, the 80-20
Mm-hmm.
rule
Mm-hmm.
from Tim Ferriss's book, The 4-Hour Work Week, like many,
Yep.
many, many years ago. So it wasn't new information, but I realized I wasn't actually applying it. I was like, oh, that's a cool concept. But I hadn't actually looked at my own tasks, looked at my
Yeah.
own projects, looked at my own things that I was doing and said, okay, which of these things is actually netting the result and which are the 80% that are getting us 20% of the results? What are the 20% that are getting 80% of the results? And is there anything in that 80% that's getting us 20% of the results that we could automate, eliminate, or systemize?
Right.
Systematize. I wish there was a systemate, but that is not a word.
I would know what you mean.
Yeah, so automate, delegate. And so that's one of them was really, and same thing. And we did this again last year. We looked at our revenue streams and we do it all the time. I'm always leaning into the 80-20 rule to look at, okay,
Yep.
20% of your customers are going to bring in 80% of the revenue.
Yeah.
So look and profile those customers. Who are they? How did they find you? What do they all have in common? How can you bring in more customers like that? Double down on the marketing sources that brought in those customers and put your attention over there, because I promise you, most entrepreneurs are just wasting a ton of time because we've been programmed that we need to do more things in order to be valuable.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's mostly just
it's getting really focused there. And I remember doing that in my business where I really was cutting. It's like, I had multiple products and it's like, wait a minute, I don't need all these products if I'm putting my focus on, and it shifts everything. It totally
Yes,
shifts
I
everything.
love that advice to offer fewer things.
Yeah.
Cut down on your number of revenue streams. Now, I'm a big believer in multiple sources of income,
Uh-huh.
which is a little different than having a ton of revenue streams in your business. So,
Yeah.
multiple sources of income is maybe you have a rental property, maybe you have some, investments that you're getting dividends from, maybe
Yes.
you have, royalties. Like that's all beautiful. Diversify,
Yep.
diversify, diversify. And
Yep.
in your business, if you have 40 different things that you're offering, you have so much bandwidth taken up by you need to do all the marketing for all of those things, needing to make sure you're
Yep.
promoting it, keeping them updated, delivery, all those things. And last year, we cut out two of our biggest revenue sources. And we doubled down on one signature program and we increased our revenue. I'm not so good at percentages, but we probably increased our revenue by 40%,
Yeah. But just
cutting out
saying, this is
a
where we're going
huge
to go.
percentage of our.
But otherwise, your marketing is all over the place every single month, and people don't know what to think about you.
You
Your
like
brand
what?
gets lost and diluted. So yeah,
100%.
so much good wisdom there. So much. So as you, the thing I hear most from women, let's go back to this time thing, because they're always looking for more time, right? They're always saying, how can I have more time? And how do we do less on purpose? So kind of in alignment with what we're talking about here. Can you give us some real world examples of how we can do less in our businesses and our life?
Yes. So, number one, look at your revenue sources and eliminate any that are a pain in the ass to deliver, or, because
That's
that'll
a
free
good
up a lot of
gauge.
energy, which frees up.
Yeah.
Um, and look at your types of customers and, double down on the 80/20 rule. So that's one. And then another thing I really recommend, and this was passed along to me by some other women who were colleagues and mentors. They said, you gotta get the support that you have at home matters more, or at least get that first before
Yeah.
you get the support in your business. And I absolutely agree. We have the most world class support in our home. And I was just talking to my
Mm,
girlfriend last night. So I have two little girls that they're almost 6 and 8.5.
okay.
And when I get home at the end of the day and they're home, I am with them. And I go to bed so much more energized and having so much more time because I am not in charge of laundry. I am not in charge of dinner.
Yeah.
And those two things save me. And I know, listen, not everyone's going to be in a place where that's possible for them right from the get
Right.
go. I will tell you what, even when I was in debt, even when I was making a lot less money than I am now, like probably 5% of what I'm making now, I
Yeah.
started sending out my laundry
Very good.
to a place down the street because I was like, I know that if I pay somebody $30 to do a load of laundry, first of all, I'm supporting a small family business, which
Hmm.
always I want to do.
Yeah.
Second of all, that 2 hours or however many hours, and then the load of laundry that sits in the corner that I haven't folded and put away because I'm like that, all that bandwidth, all that time could be used towards revenue generating activities.
Yep.
Because in my business, there are certain things that only I can do. But there's a
Right.
lot of things that other people can do.
Right.
And so, really, I recommend writing out a list. What are the things that you and only you can do in your business
Hmm.
that also light you up?
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
anything that's not that, eliminate, delegate, systemate. and like there's nobody is going to be giving us an award at the end of our lives for having done the most and been the most
No.
exhausted. Like the
No.
martyr trophy isn't coming. And I
Yeah.
would way rather, pay somebody wonderful to support her family,
Yeah.
to help us in our home, to help, with all the things so that when my girls come home, I can be so with them. And then when I'm at the office during the day, I'm not grinding my gears because I'm like, oh God, there's no food in the fridge. I did dinner and then I come home and the house looks like a bomb went off. I mean, all those things are real. And I've been through many phases of my life that is very much my reality. So there's absolutely no judgment about that at all.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I want to give permission, if anybody needs it, to prioritize getting support for the things that other people really could do as
Yeah.
soon as possible, probably sooner than you think you
Yeah.
can, because the freed up time that you have can really catapult your business faster than if you're spending all your bandwidth doing the laundry.
And it's not just about the doing, it's actually about your time management. And I know you talk about this. It's like it's not time management, but it's your energy management is what I wanted to
It's
say
your
there.
energy
Yeah.
management.
Yeah. And so talk a little bit about energy management, because I think that that's really an important part of this, is that we can get put our tasks and work on all these different tasks, and it pulls energy away from us. And if we shift this up to what makes me feel better, I mean, you spending time with your kids makes you feel better. That's energy giving. So talk just a little bit about this.
Yeah, so we don't have to worry so much about time management when we're managing our energy well.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
there's so many different things that we can do to do this. But one of the main ones, simple, is just really looking at our lives, our
Hmm.
businesses, and asking about the various things that we do. Is that energizing or is that draining?
Yeah.
Asking that about our different relationships. When I get off Zoom with that person, do I feel energized or do I feel drained? When I go to
Yeah.
lunch with that person, do I feel energized or do I feel drained? When I work on this kind of project, energizing, draining. And when we fill our days with more energizing things, we don't need to worry about fitting in all the tasks because we have more energy, and the things that matter automatically pretty much get handled, because when we are filling ourselves up energetically, we don't have to micromanage our time so much,
Yeah.
and we get things done so much more quickly and so much more effectively. So for example, I am working on a new book right now, and I'm on the writing the proposal segment of the project. And it's requires quite a bit of focus. And I know that, for example, today I just did a big photo shoot yesterday with like 14 models. It was like a whole thing. We did a 3-day live event last week. I'm my tank is like not empty. Like doing something like this is very delightful and
Yeah.
relatively easy for me. I'll do it all
Yeah.
day. But sitting down to work for a few hours on the book proposal, I don't have it in me right
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
If I tried to do that, practically speaking, let's say I had set aside 3 hours, I'm going to work on the book proposal, I would have stared cross-eyed at my computer for 3 hours. Then I would have walked away kind of feeling like I did nothing in those 3 hours. So then maybe there's a bit of a spiral of beating
You have
myself
to.
up.
Yep.
So
Hmm.
then I go home for my Valentine's date with my husband. I'm like exhausted with my kids. I'm not totally present with my husband. Da, 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 da. And now I'm even further on empty than I was before, not really
Yep.
helping anyone. Versus what
Yeah.
I did today is I knew I needed a morning to just kind of putter around. I
Yeah.
don't know really what I got done. I like cleaned up. I did, a few little things, and I'm more energized because I was managing my energy, not my time. And I know tomorrow when I sit down to re-record this webinar that I need to do, I'm going to be right there and I'm going to be able to do it in 1 or 2 takes
Yeah.
because I manage my energy well today.
Yeah.
And it will save me so much time in the long run, if that
Yeah.
makes
I
sense.
think that's brilliant. It's like if we don't stop and pause like that, we progressively dim our light each day, right? It's like we can only put so much out energetically. And if we don't stop and pause in that each day, we're just going to keep getting a little dimmer versus like the pause to reconnect and let our light come back up to
Yes,
life.
and that's
Yeah.
not where our best work comes from.
Right.
Nobody needs us worn out.
No,
It's not
no.
helping anybody.
Definitely. It definitely doesn't help us do our best work.
Mm-mm.
So I love your teachings on the cycle of life. I think particularly as women, we have, all of the various cycles that we can go through. I love the lunar, I love the menstrual cycles and tuning into that as women. Could you share more about the four phases that you talk about, and just in how you apply those in your life?
Absolutely. So this was a huge eye opener for me when I realized that during my pregnancies, I was making a baby, which was the most productive thing I had ever done, but I hadn't had to try to do anything. My body just did it. And so I
Right.
started to think about the way that we operate and how much we discount the invisible in our culture. Now, specifically, when we look at nature, and we are nature, right? There are four seasons here on planet Earth. We have spring, summer, winter, fall. When we look at the menstrual cycle, which is also responsible for human life, nobody got here without somebody who had a menstrual cycle. Like, it
Right.
was required. Ovulation was required for that
Yeah.
to happen. And so the four phases of the menstrual cycle, now most of us are taught in school, okay, there's a time when you can get pregnant, don't get pregnant. And there's a time when you need, a tampon or a maxi pad. Like, that's our education,
Right.
and
Right.
also don't tell anybody and it's shameful and blah, blah.
Yeah.
Actually, our menstrual cycle is the perfect metaphor or framework for creative output, for life force made visible. And so there are four phases of the menstrual cycle that mimic the four seasons perfectly, because as within, so without. So, of course, the four energetic hormonal phases required to get an egg out there so that we would possibly fertilize it and have a baby would be the same four phases that are required for every living thing to remain alive and vital here on planet Earth. And
Hmm.
so I started looking at that, and then I saw how the moon has those same four phases. There's a time for planting seeds, it's the new moon. There's a time where those seeds start to sprout, that's the waxing moon. There's the full moon phase, which is kind of full harvest energy, everything's out in the light. And then the moon wanes again towards the new moon, and it goes over and over and over in these death and rebirth cycles. I think a woman, I don't remember exactly, but I think a woman will have like 262 cycles in her whole year. Maybe don't quote me on that. Anybody who wants to know, please Google it. We have these opportunities every single month when we're in our cycling years. And then we have the moon working with us more on a subtle level, but definitely pronounced. It was so funny. I was getting my haircut the other day, and I was the only woman in the salon, and all the guys were talking about the moons and the tide and how it impacts their bodies. It was fascinating. I was like, I don't know where I dropped in, but I did not start this conversation. It was so
Yeah.
cool because the lunar cycle is available for us to work with those little death and rebirth cycles every month for our entire lives, no matter if we're cycling or not. And when we
Yeah.
organize our energy and we organize our tasks around, okay, am I in an energy of new beginnings? Am I in an energy of full bloom and cross pollination? And am I in an energy of wrapping things up and completing, or am I in an energy of rest and reflection? Those are essentially the four
Yeah.
energies, whether you're following the lunar cycle or your menstrual cycle. When you organize your life kind of around that,
Hmm.
you get everything done that needs to happen without the burnout. The
Yeah.
problem is our culture has indoctrinated us. We live in a very masculine focused culture, and the
Right.
masculine focused culture is about the yang energy. So yang being, in Chinese medicine, there's the yin and the yang. The yang is masculine, it is solar, it's spring summer energy, wonderful energy, we love it. It's when things are going, you can see them, it's outward, it's forward motion. But without the yin, without the feminine, without the
Yeah.
autumn and the winter energy, everything would dry up and die.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
need the inward. We need the pullback. We need everything to go to seed. We need the compost. We need all of that to fertilize our growth cycles. And so when we embrace this, We become more whole humans. We could become more nourished humans. We become more deeply in touch with our life force. We become more magnetic, more creative. It's just a much
Yeah.
yummier experience of being alive.
Totally. There's that healing process, or that that rebirthing process where we're able to let our bodies just come back to the basic status of ourselves before we go back into the doing. And I love it. And I often, in my planning with my entrepreneur clients, say, let's look at the year from the perspective of the 4 seasons and think about what it is, how do you feel in winter? What do you want to be doing in winter in your business? So you start playing with those rhythms. And so when I read your book and really tied it to the moon cycles, because I don't do the menstrual cycles anymore, but it's really paying attention to what does our body need on a regular basis to recover. I loved it. I totally loved it. Let's talk about busyness. And there's such an addiction to busyness, and an addiction to stress that's out there. What are some key strategies for breaking this cycle?
I'm so glad you brought this up. So something that I've learned since Do Less was published, I've been just having an absolute love affair with the nervous system.
Me
And what
too.
I
Me
didn't
too.
know, yeah, amazing. So many of us are. The
Yeah, we're
nervous
like,
system
oh
is
my God, this speaks to
having
us.
a moment right now,
Yeah.
and I'm so glad, and we need more and more and more. I didn't realize that so much of what I taught in both of my first books, Money, a Love Story and Do Less, was actually the reason it works is because of the way the nervous system works. I just didn't know that.
Yeah.
So now I do. And so I talk about it as much as I can. So the thing is, we literally are addicted, quote unquote, to stress and busyness because all of us have a thermostat setting in our nervous system, which is completely unconscious. Our nervous system is the system of the body that is literally responsible for basically everything else. Every single thought you think is a result of your nervous system. Every sensation you have, the vast majority of your unconscious behavior, your digestive system, our hormonal system, our reproductive system, it is all on the foundation of our nervous system and
Hmm.
how regulated we are. So, our nervous system has a thermostat setting, and that thermostat setting is set according to what it felt like in our environment growing up. So, what was the general vibe? It's just basically what was the general vibe? Was it nurturing and warm and attuned and connected? Was it chaotic and lonely? Was it dangerous? What was going on? I personally have a default nervous system thermostat for a certain level of pressure and stress because there was always a general vibe of pressure and stress, specifically around time and money in my environment. That was the energetic message that my body was receiving. So, yes, there were verbal messages, but our nervous system does not speak in words. Our nervous system speaks in feelings and energy. So,
Yeah.
how did it feel? And according to our nervous system, anything that is unfamiliar automatically registers as it being unsafe.
Hmm.
So, most of us, we want to live these calm, relaxed, harmonious lives. And that desire is actually asynchronous or antagonistic with our default unconscious nervous system setting. So, what
Mm.
are we to do if everything we desire to experience is outside what we've experienced before? And therefore, our unconscious, our nervous system program is going to do anything it possibly can to prevent us from experiencing every single thing we want.
Yeah.
What do we do?
Yeah.
Like,
So
what
there's
do
this
we
conflict between the two.
Yes, we are, in fact, in a way, addicted to whatever that general vibe was that our
Yeah.
nervous system developed in. And it began in utero. And then there's also deep programming that comes from our ancestral our
Interesting.
ancestral programming. So much
Yeah.
of our DNA and our nervous system is actually based on experiences we didn't even have, but our
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
bodies are
Carried
carrying
it.
those
Hmm.
memories.
Yeah.
So, anyway, it's a lot, right? But
But
it's
it's
such,
good. It's so good. And it's, and I've my studies around like the vagus nerve and our nervous system and all of that has not gone back to childhood. So I think this is really fascinating. And to go back even through our ancestors is even more, to bring that forward. And I've heard that a lot from, that we can carry the emotions and the trauma that happened from
and
our
we do.
ancestors. Yeah.
We do.
And
And that's why I'm sure you've had this experience. I'm sure you listening have had this experience that we've all had these moments where we have these upwelling of fear or sadness or anger or some kind of response to a scenario, and we don't know why.
yeah.
It may be that we are having a trigger that's triggering ancestral trauma that
Yeah.
lives in our bodies, but we will never know the story. And
Yeah.
the good news is you can update your thermostat setting without needing to know all the stories.
Yeah.
So thank goodness,
Yeah.
because otherwise
Yeah.
that would be a lot of talk
Yeah.
therapy
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
like stuff you're never going to know. My
Yeah.
granny's dead. I'm not going to know what happened to her
Yeah.
most of the time,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
she's still with me, and
Yeah.
so I consider it, I'm sure you've heard that as we heal 7 generations forward and
Yeah.
7 generations back. And
Mhm.
that's partially because of what we know about epigenetics. And so when I am in a scenario where I feel that I am up against my edge of my window of tolerance or my window of capacity or my range of resonance, like I'm expanded beyond what feels safe. And that could be in a joyful way, right? Like
Yeah.
it could be towards something I actually desire. And I've had this happen many times. When I first got off of my first book deal, I was so deeply triggered and in hysterical tears because it was beyond my capacity of
Yep.
receiving. So
Mhm.
when we find ourselves getting up to the edge of sensation, like I'm starting to feel anxious, this is starting to feel too much, even if it's good, that's when we need to lean into what you were talking about, vagal toning, when we need to lean into any kind of nervous system regulation practice. And there are so many,
Yeah.
but one of my favorite ones is really easy to do is just noticing gravity. So
Mm.
just do
Ooh,
it
that's a
right.
good one. It's
Good
like,
one.
oh, I can
Have
feel that.
conversation and notice gravity at the same time. So I'm just noticing right now as we're talking, I'm aware of my feet on the ground. I'm aware of the way my soles feel in my socks and on the floor. I'm aware of my palms resting on the desk and just the feeling of gravity on my body, and that I don't have to do anything to deserve to be held by gravity. I don't have to do, it's just here, just keeping me safe.
Yeah.
So noticing
Yeah.
gravity is a wonderful practice. What we can do is essentially find ways to signal to our bodies, to signal to our nervous system that we are safe. And so for somebody who's addicted, coming back to your questions, for somebody who's feeling like, I want to be more calm, I want
Mhm.
to rest, I want to be more still, but I can't. Right? Like if I sit down to
It's
meditate,
like,
my mind races,
yeah.
I
Yeah.
can't stop. I just, that's because being still feels really unsafe to your body. Now, there's a few things going on there. For many of us, we were never taught how to actually feel our emotions. And what we were taught was that our emotions are a problem and to avoid them at all costs. So, obviously, if we're programmed that way, we are going to stay as busy as possible and stay in motion 24 hours a day so that we can't have a moment where we actually have to sit and feel what comes up when we're still.
Yeah.
Because what comes
Yeah.
up when we're still is all the feelings that we have not felt for our whole life
Yeah.
when we were busy.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you can do that in nervous system language. We call it titration. So you can do it in small, doable pieces so that over time you can grow your window of tolerance. So maybe you can't meditate for 15 minutes, but maybe for 30 seconds, you could set a timer to look out the window and breathe into your low belly or
Right.
rock yourself back and forth. And then you could expand that over time. And more, what your body's going to get the message of is it is safe to be still. I'm
Mm,
not going to die.
yeah.
Because basically, what's happening is we're wired to think that if we stop, we're going to die. That's why we
Mm,
stay busy. And
interesting.
so we can work with ourselves and also trained practitioners. And also there's a million beautiful programs and, there's breath work, there's EMDR, there's the tapping, there's all kinds of incredible programs out there. Um, but we can work with ourselves. We can work with programs. We can work with trained practitioners to increase our body's ability to feel safe with newer and newer experiences so that our window of tolerance or our window of resonance expands and we are essentially more present for our lives.
Right. Right. I love it. And it's just the more we practice these little moments, the more we expand in how we can really shift in our bodies and how we show up in the world. So good. So good. I know that you've got some newer work coming up around your relationship with money. And I know we're not going to go deep into this, but that's some of your newer work. Just what called you to really work in that space?
My first book was about money and it came out in 2013. And very shortly after it came out, it's called Money, a Love Story. Very proud of that book. However, I just didn't really have anything more to say on money. So even though my publisher wanted another book, I was like getting married and having babies and doing other things. And so then Do Less came out. I am the kind of person, I just follow my curiosity
Hmm.
and I learn things and then I share them. So that's
Bravo.
what my career is. I just
Bravo.
experiment with stuff and then talk about it. And so what happened is it was very organic. It was about 18 months ago. All of a sudden, I had all these new thoughts and I was having new experiences around money and the nervous system. And
Yeah.
I was like, oh, people need to know. So then I started weaving it into some of my other work around do less. So I was talking about make more, do less, some things like that. And ultimately the message is still the same. It's really
Yeah.
about tapping into our inherent worth and our internal source of power,
Hmm.
which is actually accessed through nervous system regulation.
Yeah.
So the work around money just it kind of came back for me and it was like,
Cool.
hey, there's more to do here. So now I really work with students around regulating their nervous system, expanding their range of tolerance, expanding their window of capacity so that they can expand their abundance financially
Yeah.
because our
Wonderful.
nervous system thermostat also really impacts our ability to earn and manage money well and feel safe and secure and free and prosperous.
Excellent. Excellent. I love it. I love it. So, where can people learn more about you and your work?
So the best place to connect with me is on Instagram at Kate
Hmm.
Northrup. I do have a guide that I created. It's called the Pressure Relief Kit. So if you've
Hmm.
liked this conversation around cyclical planning, energy management, the nervous system, I have in that guide for free my 6 favorite strategies for relieving pressure in your life without anything needing to change externally. So no one else has to act different. Nobody, nothing needs to change externally for you to feel different with these 6 strategies. So if you just go to Instagram at Kate Northrup and send me a DM with the word melt, so just with the word melt, my little bot assistant will send you the free guide. And then my website is Kate Northrup. Would love to have you join me over there. I write a weekly dispatch about ways to expand your capacity to have abundance. And then I've got my new podcast that's called Plenty.
Excellent. 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 And the final question I always close with are what are 3 pearls of wisdom you'd like to leave with us today?
Okay, number 1 is your worth is not determined by how much you do. You are inherently worthy. You always were, you always will be. You don't have to do a thing about it. Number 2 is Your inherent worth has nothing to do with how much money you make or how much is in your bank account. It is inherent, always will be. Can't do anything about it, even if you try. And then the third, okay, so those two, what is the third? You are nature.
I love that. Totally love that. I feel it. Totally feel that. Well, this has been a delight, Kate. Thank you so much for joining us. And I know my listeners are going to really enjoy listening to all your good wisdom today.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me.
You bet.